The paranormal is an enigma. Since the dawn of our species, things that seem outside the realm of understanding have been dubbed supernatural. Over time, science have helped us measure, predict, and quantify this reality, yet there are still unsolved mysteries and unexplained phenomena that plague our attempts to rationalize this world. Ghost sightings, near-death experiences, and the psychic phenomenon, just to name a few, are among the subjects science dismisses as flaws in perception, hallucinations, and outright delusions. During this program, we attempt to bridge the gap between diverse viewpoints and air out the opinions of experienced individuals in the fields of investigation, metaphysics, and skepticism. Welcome to the Supernatural Symposium. Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Symposium. I am your host, Justin Brown, and this is the premiere of a very brand new show that we're airing live on Live Paranormal and on the Interface Death YouTube channel. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. I have a brand new format for you guys this evening. We're going to try to raise the bar for live paranormal shows on social media, so let's see how this goes. Hopefully no technical problems happen. So I have no wood. I have fake wood to knock on, so we'll knock on fake wood. If you have wood at home, go ahead and knock on it, because we have a lot of people to get to know, talk to, and hear stories, opinions, and viewpoints. So without further ado, we're going to go over here to the gang. Okay, let's introduce Steve Hummel first. Okay, if you guys have watched the promotion this week on the Live Paranormal page on YouTube, we have Steve Hummel, Audra Loibl, and Kenny Biddle. We have a paranormal investigator, we have a psychic, and a skeptic. And we're going to introduce these people to you. So, Steve, why don't you say hi to everybody for me? I'm glad you can join me again. I've had you on the show, of course, on Necromancer, and I've got to meet you for the first time this year. And I'm looking forward to just more paranormal shenanigans again. So thanks for joining. All right, Audra, how are you doing this evening? Thank you for joining us. You are the only one that's responded to my reaching out to the psychic community. Maybe that's not a good thing, as Kenny has alluded to. So, are you ready for this show tonight? 2 hours of paranormal. Can you handle that? Awesome. I'm glad. So, last but not least, Kenny Biddle. What's up, brother? How have you been? Psychics might hate me. I don't know. I'm friends with some. Maybe Kenny can teach me how not to be hated. Are you a master of that?
I'm pretty good, but a master? No, because there's definitely a significant amount that still hate me.
Justin, I hate to interrupt, but all of your guests were muted.
Yeah, I just unmuted them. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I don't have a producer. I just unmuted him. I just realized it. So I ruined everybody's introduction, but that's okay. So, Kenny, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready now.
Okay, I'm not ready, but you guys are ready. That's good. All right. Let's introduce the show. Okay, what we're going to do tonight, guys, is we're going to try to get diverse viewpoints from these people in the panel. You know, I tried to, get people that would have a variance in opinion about certain subject matters in the paranormal. We're going to talk about the state of the paranormal tonight. Is it getting anywhere? What is the issues concerning people getting along? What is the issues with the paranormal research not producing evidence that convinces skeptics or convinces the scientific community that there's something to it? Okay, there's a lot of things in the pulp culture that are, trying to bring out some interest in the paranormal community, but there's some issues, and we're going to talk about them. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to Steve Hummel. Steve, why don't you real quick in the next couple minutes tell us how you got into the paranormal, why you're doing this, and what are you doing now?
I kind of course, would start off kind of cliche. Like if you ask a lot of other people, they have certain experience at a younger age, different things like that, experiencing different things like that. However, it didn't really become as strong a passion until I started working at former West Virginia State Penitentiary. First, I started working the haunted house, but then when I started becoming a tour guide, and then ultimately started working the night tours and meeting like-minded people with similar experiences and questions and different things. So, being a tour guide at the penitentiary for almost 11 years and meeting skeptics, meeting believers, meeting psychics, and different, all different walks of life in the paranormal field, if you will. That's definitely what solidified my interest in the paranormal. I'm a firm believer you should be passionate about your approach to the paranormal. I think a lot of people, they get in it, they kind of believe in everything they hear. They don't find out for themselves. Consciously or consciously just go along with what other people say, what people think. They develop their own view, their own concept on the paranormal. They don't really quite think for themselves. But by doing so, being involved with the paranormal through the prison, I met my really best friends, if you will, Ryan, Dave, and Jason. We do a YouTube channel with YouTube, obviously. It's called Paranormal Quest. The one thing I'm very comfortable with our approach to investigating per se is to be very, very nitpicky, if you will, very thorough on what we even consider potentially unexplained before the word paranormal gets thrown around. So as a result of that, being involved with the paranormal, I've also started collecting items that people have asked me to remove from their homes, businesses, different that. So that leads into what I'm doing now, which is collecting items that people donate to me or ask me to take out of their homes because they believe that there are other energy or entities attached to them, however people want to label that. Some items do come with provided some interesting evidence. And Justin, you've been to the museum, once already? And you definitely have expressed your own feel on the collection itself.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting place, to say the least.
Kind of that, long story short, I mean, I can, I think a lot of us can go half an hour on what got us into it, but that's pretty much very cut.
All right, man. Well, we'll get more into maybe some of your personal experiences, but tonight we're going to talk about, what your opinion is based on, the state of the paranormal, what people call evidence, so on and so forth. We'll start to get into that tonight, and we're going to talk about these things. So I'll get back to you, Steve. Audra, you're a psychic, right? Let's hear about how you learned that you had abilities. Like when was it when you discovered that you may be different from everybody, that you're sensing things that are not explainable?
It started when I was very young, as far back as I can remember. Now, I also have an identical twin sister, and I honestly feel that contributed to the heightened state of sensitivity that I had. So, very young, my sister and I did telepathy as a main form of communication with each other. And we were playing around with telekinesis and just doing pretty much anything you can think of because it was so normal to us. I really didn't find out until I was around 10, 11, or 12 that other people couldn't do this. And once our parents started seeing us doing more of this stuff, and we're talking about spirits, we're predicting the future, and these things are coming true, they were like, oh, you can't do that. That's evil. You know how it was. I mean, thank God society is changing today to where it's a lot more accepted. So that went on. And then in my teens, as life got busy and life goes on, I kind of put them in the back burner. Still had my gifts. I just didn't really use them as much until I got older. And then once I started having kids, they were born with gifts. Everything just, boom, opened right up. And then I was flooded with information every day, seeing spirits, communicating with my guides, reading situations and people. So that's kind of how it all started. I mean, really, I was just born with it.
Well, that is very interesting. I definitely want to talk to you more about that. But we'll go to Kenny. Let him tell us what he's all about when he first started doing what he does, and then we're going to get the show on the road. Kenny.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I am ready for this. Why don't you tell people what you do, why you do it, when it started, and how it led you to now?
Wow. Okay. So back in 97, I started as a ghost hunter. I've always had an interest in paranormal topics, Loch Ness and monsters, cryptids, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, whatever. I've always loved it. But growing up, I finally got on this new thing called the internet in 97 and joined a local ghost hunting team, went around with them for a couple of years. And it actually got me into photography. And the more I learned about photography and how to do it, the intricacies, the settings, what effects I can make or create through just the camera, the more I started leaning towards a more skeptical side. So by about 2007, I started going over to the dark side, and I actually read a couple articles from someone named Benjamin Radford and Joe Nickel, two guys that investigate full-time paranormal mysteries from a skeptical and science point of view. And it really opened my eyes to how much more work there is to investigating these claims than I was doing. And that just made me look into it more. Like, what am I doing wrong? What am I not doing? And that grew over the years until I started writing my own stuff. And with my photography background, I started lending or putting out information about how a lot of these paranormal anomalies, the photographic anomalies, were being created, and showing people, demonstrating how they were created. So that really, that was the beginning of my skeptical side. And the more I learn, the more I try to pass on. And I've been writing and solving mysteries for the last couple of years based on that approach.
That's awesome, man. I will say one thing about Kenny. His ability to write articles is probably the best I've read when it comes to trying not to outright say that, everybody in the paranormal community is full of bullcrap. Like you said, you came from a ghost hunter origin, but then you learned that, hey, wait a minute, there's explainable things. And part of the scientific method is, you got to weed through all the false positives, all the explainable things to try to get to the anomalies, which is what essentially ghost hunters try to do, right?
Right. I have the background. I can relate to people on both sides. All right. The believers per se, and skeptics, because that's usually how they're designated. So I can relate to both sides, and I understand where everyone's coming from. So when I write articles about it, I try to incorporate that so that I'm not saying, well, this is bullshit. It's I don't know. And if I don't know, that's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to make up something just because I'm a skeptic or I'm a believer. That's the way I try to come across, and I appreciate the compliment.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, guys, this is how it's going to work. Okay, everybody, the chat room is lit up tonight as I figured it would. If you have a question for any of the guests during any point of the show, just write it down. We have chat moderators looking out for your questions. Okay, we're going to get back to them periodically. We're going to ask a few questions here on the show real quick, and then we're going to go and see if we can pull out some of the really good questions you have for our guests. So just if you have a question, be patient and we will get to you. All right. Let's start with Audra here real quick. Audra, I'm really curious. Did your abilities develop over time? And if they did, why do you think they did, and how did they develop?
When I was younger, they were super strong, like way, way strong, much stronger than they are now. Because I wasn't using them for a few years growing up, they kind of went dormant. My vibration lowered a little bit. So then about 3-4 years ago, I started thinking, okay, I want to get back into doing this again. So I've been working to raise my vibrational frequency higher so that I can be as good as I was when I was younger. So it just takes work. It takes work. I mean, you have to do things like getting Reiki done to clear any blockages in your chakras, have your aura cleansed and repaired to fill in any holes, because that's how we read people. We need to make sure it's nice and strong. We need to meditate. Reading people is by far the quickest way to raise your vibration. Doing intuitive exercises. So there's definitely a lot of things that I'm doing to try and get back to where I was when I was young. But I mean, I'm still pretty happy with where I'm at. So that's been worth it.
That's cool. Real quick, we'll ask you another question before we move on. What first validated it for you? Did you ever doubt yourself? Like what validated to you that you were having these abilities?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of things. I could see spirits, talk to them, hear, feel them, and my guides, the angels, just even predicting things, getting things validated. When I do readings and mediumship and people are validating exactly what I'm telling them, that shows me how well I'm doing or how well I'm not doing. And that's what validates it for me. That's what that shows me how good I am or how good I'm not.
Awesome. I love it when, people give me validation on some of the stuff that I do. A lot of times I've learned when I first started that what I believed was, anomalous, or what I believed was something paranormal, years on down the road, I figured out that wasn't. Did you experience anything like that through your journey as being a psychic medium? Did you ever find out that some of the stuff, that you were picking up on or envisioning was in fact not a psychic ability?
I'm pretty able to discern the difference, but I will say that any event that goes on, I will always try and debunk it. Paranormal stuff I love that. So I'm a realist, I should say. Part of me is skeptic on some things and other things that's not. And I know that sounds pretty weird since I'm a medium, but I can tell, like, for example, things will move in my house. Things will fly off the wall. My phone continually flies off my nightstand. Different things will happen. And so I'm going to look around and see, okay, was my phone vibrating to make it fly off my nightstand? Was it turned on? What could have made that happen? And I'll do that before I ever rule it to be something supernatural.
Wow. Yeah. It's kind of hard to say, I can relate. I've seen things just fly across the room. No explanation for that, right? It's rare. In my experience, it is. But when it happened, I'm like, I have to know why this is happening. You can guess. What, did a ghost do that, or did someone's mind do that? Was it a magic spell that did that? Was there something else that could explain this? Things start off paranormal, but sometimes. And one of my most favorite things is you figure out what caused it, and you're kind of removing the para from the paranormal. You're trying to explain it using science and using, critical thinking and all that stuff. So that's cool that you do that. I think that's awesome. Steve, is there ever a moment that you realize, like, hey man, I was doing this wrong, I need to go back to the drawing table? Is there a huge difference from when you started compared to now, like the learning process or the learning curve of being a paranormal investigator? Has there been one for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone, I believe, that walked this earth whether it's paranormal on the topic of paranormal or something else, you have to learn through trial by error. I mean, that's no one's necessarily born a Rembrandt. You know what I mean. You have to work and develop. Your in this case your approach to the paranormal. So yes, I mean, I've been like many other people right off the get go. You get a photograph with, oh my God, I got 15 orbs in it, and it's lens flare, dust, pollen, water vapor, insects in the air, different things like that. There's always that, that typical rude awakening that it's not everything's going to be paranormal. And again, that's what I really, really respect with my three best friends and our approach to what we do for our channel. And everything we do gets run through with a fine-tooth comb. Dave's been doing photography for probably 10 years now. Ryan just graduated for the 4-year degree in cinema production. I mean, we try to explain, rationally what potentially could have been on our video feed. Like any video we do for our channel, we will not accept a still shot, like a picture of an orb, because they're so controversial. And there's really no way to really prove or disprove that. So, for example, anything that we consider a potential light anomaly has to appear and disappear within the same shot of video, uncut, unedited. So there needs to be a strong sense of rationality and a very intelligent approach to the paranormal, or else people will fall for anything. So, that's one thing we really, really focus on, is trying to be as thorough as possible.
Right. And you mentioned photography, and that's a key thing. You mentioned that you guys are photographers, you guys are, you produce videos, and you are filmmakers. Knowing that, is there a pressure to try to find something for your video production? Like when you do an investigation, do you ever put up investigations that you absolutely did not find anything? Is there a pressure to kind of try to find something to present in your videos?
Most of the time we go out, if we don't get anything, we don't get anything. And normally, if that's the case, we just don't do a video on it. We don't do an episode with it. So there are projects we started that we scrapped because there's nothing that we would feel comfortable putting out there that we felt would be unexplained before we would even consider it paranormal. We in our own right, like Dave's more with photography, Dave's more with video. I do a lot of drawing and painting. I do a lot of writing. We're all artists in our own way, and when we do our videos, we do our episodes, we approach those in the same manner. If it's not up to what we think is going to be a honest, quality episode, then it gets scrapped.
Very, very cool. Kenny, now that we're talking about photography, what are the first things you started to discover and understand about photography, and what type of false positives or anomalies that can be explained? And what do you think the problem is with the paranormal community in general with the understanding of photography and the cognitive dissonance that occurs when you present them with the information?
just hit me with like 4 or 5 questions at once. That's cool.
You can handle it. Don't cry.
Yeah, I can handle it. Wow. Let's see. Wow. Well, I guess the first things that I noticed were orbs. I mean, since that was mentioned,
right.
it was understanding depth of field and perspective was 2 of the biggest things that I benefited from when I started understanding it in relation to photography, knowing that the camera only focuses on one plane at a time, as in one distance away from the camera at a time, and that things much further beyond that or much closer to the camera would appear out of focus. And that opened it up for dust particles, for bugs, for pollen, for rain and snow, and all these other things. Hair, even hair. Although most times people think it appears as a strand, like a streak going across. If you get it at an angle, the flash actually, the light travels down the hair and hits the tip and becomes an orb. Because that's the point at where it really reflects and it goes out of focus. So you see what looks like an orb. And once I started realizing that, I was like, all right, so what else is going on? And I started looking at video and realizing how night vision works, and that the infrared light only covers a certain area, and that you can have dust particles and bugs come into the scene and literally appear in the middle of the scene and then disappear in the scene without going to the edges. And once I realized that, and I could duplicate it constantly and consistently, I realized, okay, this is, there's nothing to this. There really is no legitimacy to quote unquote orbs as being part of paranormal. When it comes to the issues with the paranormal community and photography, I think knowledge is the biggest thing. People don't understand. You have the majority, and this is from my point of view, my experience only that I can speak from, but the majority of people that I deal with are used to point and shoot cameras, and that's the limit of their skill. Literally point a camera somewhere and they push a button. I'm not saying that in a derogatory kind of a way or a mean way, but that's how they grew up, with these small compact cameras. They just point, they push the button, they take a picture, and that's it. You know, they don't go into all the settings. They don't understand how the settings work and how it affects your picture, how it affects the end image that you get. And I think that's the biggest problem overall with the paranormal community, is that most ghost hunters don't do their due diligence. They don't do all the necessary background research into the various topics that they need to. It's nice to hear that there are people that have the background in photography and or video editing and production, so they have some skills. But sometimes it's not enough, and it's not. They're the minority in the paranormal community. Most of the people do not have a background in photography. They don't understand it, but they see it on TV. They say, "Oh, well, I got the same thing in my picture, therefore this must be a ghost," without an actual explanation, without details to support why they came to that conclusion. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. Did that answer all your questions?
Yeah, I want to talk about a lot of the cognitive dissonance and the confirmation bias that happens, because I think, like you said, you present them with this stuff. You can even write an article. Kenny Biddle can write a 10-page article about all this stuff. They'll read it, and they'll still email you calling you an asshole. Right? Oh,
that's being mild.
I know it happens to you. It happens to me. It happens to everybody that debunks, photographic, stuff for peer review. What we need to talk about is what is cognitive dissonance? What is confirmation bias? Why aren't people digesting this education we're trying to provide? Do you have a take on why?
I think over the years, I think the problem comes to the investment, the time, the emotional investment, the financial investment into this hobby that they have. So cognitive dissonance is defined as, let's start with that, the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. So basically, it's you have an idea, you have two ideas that conflict each other, and you usually stay with your core belief. So if you have this core belief that ghosts are real, that paranormal activity exists, that every time you go to a place that's called or allegedly haunted, it really is haunted, and you're going to get all this paranormal evidence, then that's the idea going in. And if I give you a mountain of evidence that counteracts that says, no, every experience that you came out, every claim that you made, we have sufficient information that explains it with natural causes. The cognitive dissonance is that person will take all that information and say, you know what? what I believe is, makes sense to me. What you're saying makes sense to me, but they're conflicting, and I'm going to stay with my original core belief. And then sometimes you fall into the problem of the backfire effect, where the more information you give them that contradicts what they already believe, the more they dig their heels in and they fortify that belief. I don't think there's a lot of talk about being open-minded, and that, from my perspective, I hear a lot of skeptics are closed-minded, that we're not open to things. But I think it's actually the reverse. I think a lot of the ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts that I deal with are very closed-minded. They have their beliefs, and they're going to stick with them no matter what. That's not true for everybody. I want to make that clear, because I do have good conversations, and we look at experiences, and we're able to solve some mysteries together. Like, me, the skeptic, and other people as ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts, we get together, we solve a mystery, there's a better understanding of it. Unfortunately, the majority is the other way, where no matter how much evidence there is, they still dig their heels in and keep with their core belief.
All right. Makes sense to me. And hopefully the viewers digested that.
I hope so. Sometimes I go off on a tangent and I forget where I'm going.
You said it exactly how I would have said it. So I'm just making sure, we get that ironed out on the show. All right, guys, we're going to go to the comments. Hopefully Misty and Jessica's not blown up and are like a pile of ash right now. So, Missy, go ahead and sort through and pick me out some good questions for these folks on the show tonight.
Okay. The first question is, what is the scariest thing that has happened with the paranormal to you?
We'll start with Audra.
Well, the scariest thing that's ever happened to me was when I went into a home that was having a lot of activity. I went in there to clean it out. And I stayed the night there, and there was definitely a lower level energy there that was just, it was moving things. You can hear the snarls and growls. You could feel the presence. I would try and sleep, and then my covers would lift really fast completely off me and go across the room. I mean, there was a lot of activity. I wasn't that scared, but it was a scary situation, definitely for the people that were with me, because they couldn't feel what I was feeling. Like, I knew that we weren't in danger. This was just a spirit that was trying to antagonize and try and cause fear in people. But yeah, definitely a lot of stuff. There would be a baseball bat under the bed, just ding, 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 and just constantly moving by itself. It was really interesting. I think that was probably one of the funnest experiences I've had, because I was there. I got to see it with my own eyes. It wasn't someone telling me what was going on. Definitely one of the best experiences ever.
Cool. Steve, any scary experiences?
I deal a lot with helping people cleansings for their houses and helping them as well. I deal a lot with spiritual warfare and demonology and that aspect of the field, if you will. So, given that, I mean, a lot with that can be kind of intimidating. There's not a lot that's going to provide physical evidence to support whatever I would tell you on that aspect of it. I will say one thing that I did see that was confirmed by my friend Ryan, and this is before we even had Paranormal Quest, and my good friend and mentor, Paulie Gear, who was the one credited for taking the Shadow Man picture at the penitentiary in Moundsville here in West Virginia.
Dave's mom.
She looked at, Dave's mom, yes, absolutely. And she looked at me. We were all, actually Dave was there too. We were all in the kitchen of the new cafeteria. And she looked over at me and then made a really weird face, like she was kind of uncomfortable with what she saw. And I said something like, "What?" My first thought is what or who's behind me, And then she said, "Your face changed." I said, "Well, that's weird. I don't feel any different than I did before." I looked over at Ryan to ask him the same question if he saw it. As I looked at Ryan, which we're all about 10 to 15 feet apart, if that, sitting in metal folding chairs. And as I looked at Ryan, his face had actually changed as he looked at me. But it wasn't like a physical change in his face. It's like there was a face about a foot in front of his face that was distorting my view of him, in reality. So that situation was definitely kind of intimidating. It was really interesting, and that was probably one of the core experiences, although we, wasn't documented, but that definitely solidified my curiosity in the field. So I would say that one. That would be one that first comes to mind.
Right. Even though documenting such things that I've experienced that are profound were not going to happen, because they did happen before I started trying to document things. So it's only ironic that when you go out to point cameras at things and record audio, that stuff doesn't happen to you again. It's kind of like what ghost hunters do in general, is trying to chase that one experience or that one thing. But in this case, you're in West Virginia Penitentiary, and those are some of those scariest places. So I'm not surprised that you said that. Okay, Kenny, I am very interested to know how you're going to answer this. Have you ever been scared? Has anything happened to you that would evoke fear in your heart?
Wow. The only thing that scares me is when I do something wrong and my wife is pissed. That's scary. That's about as scary as it gets. And if she's listening, I love you, honey. But paranormal wise, no. I really haven't come across anything that's scary. That I've never run away or screamed or been like, oh, crap, something bad's going to happen. I wait for it. I've tried to. Most of the people that I do interact with, I have a really good relationship, and I'm proud of this. I have a good relationship with a lot of paranormal teams, from all extremes, from like people that go out as hobbyists on the weekends to people that claim to fight and eradicate demons and stuff like that. And I've offered, it's like, please take me along. I want to see this. I want to see what's going on and see all the scary stuff that I hear about, because they tell me stories. But personally, no, I've never been in a situation on a ghost hunt, a paranormal investigation or anything that has, freaked me out or scared me. Most of the time it's an average, almost boring night, except for the social interaction with the people. That's fun. So
right.
Sorry to disappoint.
Well, I knew you were going to say that. I assume that a lot of people get into it because they've had personal experiences that they couldn't explain, but you're not one of them.
Well, you know what? I mean, to be fair, when I started as a ghost hunter, I would have quote unquote experiences, but they were jump scares, because we were always investigating in the dark. So, somebody brushed up against you, or you caught a cobweb, in your hair, and you thought somebody was pulling your hair, and it freaked you out because you didn't know what it was. But then, later on, as I learned more, I realized, okay, there's, spider webs hanging down. There's people that are bumping into me, or things sticking out, and I can't see anything because it's freaking dark. It's because for some reason we turn the lights out, and I bump into things. So
people like to be scared. They're scared in the dark.
Yeah. On house attractions, roller coasters, people love being scared. So
that's right. Okay, we're going to go over to YouTube.
Uh-oh.
YouTube, Jessica, do you have any questions for these folks?
Yes, I have one for Audra. Sam, Audra, when you were explaining in the beginning of the show, like when you were, little and stuff, Sam wanted to know, how did all of this affect your acceptance to understand what was going on?
Well, for me, it was perfectly normal. That's what I had done my whole life, and it was normal. And I thought everybody did what I did and was like me. I mean, really, I wasn't until my preteens, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, that I realized that nobody did what I did other than my sister and I. So it was always accepted with me. It was always a part of me and who I was.
All right. Any
You
other
want me to go to
questions?
the next one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Scotty, he wanted to know, considering you guys go to dislocated locations at times, do you guys go armed like a Glock 19?
Who?
I guess what he's saying is when you're in the middle of the night, you're at locations, sometimes in not so great neighborhoods. Do you guys carry like a concealed carry to protect yourself?
Are you asking me?
Steve, go ahead and answer that question, then we'll move to the other two.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No, I think Jason carries pepper spray or something. So not normally. I mean, I do have a concealed carry permit, but I never really think of bringing it. Not always that. Don't always have that great a memory to remind myself to do it.
Audra, ever go to a paranormal investigation or a client investigation strapped?
Strapped?
Meaning you're armed. You have something on your person to protect you in case someone attacks you with a weapon.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. I never worry about that.
Okay. Kenny.
I don't know. Well, I mean, you know what? I always carry a knife. I always have a pocket knife, but I mean, that's not for protection per se. It's just, I grew up, I've been a mechanic forever, an engineer forever. So I've always had a pocket knife. So I carry that. And I'm pretty confident in my own abilities because I did train for many years. I achieved a black belt in Kempo. So if I ever have to get in a fight, which I hope I don't, I'm confident in my ability to defend myself. But usually I try to avoid such situations.
Right. You're never in a location that you think that the crime rate is so incredibly high that the chances are you might get into an altercation with somebody with a weapon. You've never.
Well, yes and no. Like I've never been. I like guns, but I don't have one. I don't own one. I think they're cool in Call of Duty and stuff like that, but I don't actually own one. I have a whole bunch of swords. Like I have probably about 20 swords. I have about 50 lightsabers, but I don't think that's going to do any good. But I do go to locations that are in sketchy neighborhoods. If the investigation calls for it, that I have to go there. But I usually make sure I have plenty of people with me. And when you go in as a group, it's much more likely that I will avoid any confrontations when I have a large group than if I just go in by myself. And if I go in by myself, I wear my ninja outfit so that they can't see me going in.
You just hope that they appreciate the art of Kempo and use that against you.
Yeah. And I try to talk to everybody. I mean, even if we go into sketchy neighborhoods, if you reach out and you talk to the locals, most times they're going to help you. I mean, there's with the news and you hear all this stuff, bad stuff going on all over the country. But in my experience, if you talk to them and say, hey, I'm looking into this, I want to write an article. Hey, I might mention your name. They help you because they want that. They like that. It's attention. It's calling attention to themselves, and they get into an article or a newspaper or a magazine. They help you out. That's been my experience. I've never had a bad experience so far in the last, I don't know, 20 years.
Awesome. Really glad to hear that. There was one time I can remember I was helping a friend shoot a paranormal film in one of the most dangerous places in the country. We were up at the House of Wills in Cleveland, Ohio, and you literally hear gunshots. I mean, it's really bad. Prostitution, drugs, deaths, stabbing shootings happened all the time. And the guy that I was shooting the movie for, he had to carry a gun because he was in there by himself for 3 days and 3 nights. So I think if it's that extreme, it's a good idea. I mean, even Eric Freeman, the owner of the House of Wills, told him, it's like, hey, man, do you got a gun? And he's like, yeah, I got a gun. And so he felt okay to leave him there. But it has to be a pretty extreme situation, I would think, to carry a gun. So interesting question, but usually none of us think that you need it. So let's move on, guys. We'll get back to you guys in just a moment. Let's proceed with this paranormal unity we're trying to establish here. All right, Steve, what is it that you think is the main problem in the paranormal field right now? If you think there is one, is it paranormal pulp culture? Putting out all kinds of bad methodologies out there? Is it cognitive dissonance? Is it lack of education? What do you think it is? What's the main issue that you see?
Well, the one thing I completely agree with what you said, that is definitely one of the big things I think that kind of the way trumps that way is ego. So many egos in the paranormal, so much jealousy. Tends to overshadow what I feel the need. You said unity. Ego. That's just a general term. So I know that not everyone's like that. It definitely dampers the progression. Not dampers the progression. The betterment of the field.
Steve, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if there's a fan or an appliance in the background where you're at. I didn't catch all of that. I don't know.
Okay, basic ego and lack of knowledge.
Okay. Do you think it's just because people don't know that there's education out there? They don't quite know what they need to educate themselves about. What would you suggest to people out there listening that want to learn more or just don't know what to learn? What would you suggest to them?
Well, first, I definitely do what you just said. But definitely, in addition to that, things that ego plays a big role in that. Everyone agree with it when they're doing something. A lot of people will go being offended, not sit. So, okay, how can I better myself as a paranormal investigator? There are a lot of people out there that I feel would be good people to for betterment. Investigators being better promoters of paranormal. What's that? In some cases, so I don't feel comfortable sitting out here putting out a few names and get somebody off or someone getting mad about me not saying their name. So I would just definitely promote people doing work and learn as much as you can what you have on. If it's going to be something you want to learn, being a paranormal field in this case, if it is a option for you, put blinders on, learn as much as you can, best of and go along was the best you can get.
All right, so basically what you're saying is, try to leave your ego at home, try to find a group that, appears like they've been, they're seasoned and experienced, and try to learn from them, and try not to, just get all your information from really silly sources is pretty much what you're saying.
Right. Well, a while back when I had my own gym and fitness center, the sign I had above the front door and the back door, your ego here. Because every day you come into the gym, there's always room for better. There's always room for making yourself stronger. But in this case, there's always room for making yourself more intelligent, becoming a better-minded, not only person, but in this case, paranormal.
Right on. Thanks for that, Steve. Audra, What do you think is wrong with the paranormal community? Do you agree with Steve? Do you find that you observe things a little differently? What is your main qualm with the paranormal community that you interact with and you know about?
I'd probably say the biggest thing is that people believe everything they hear, and they're learning from the wrong places. Anyone can type anything out, throw it up on the internet, or put it in a Facebook group, but it doesn't mean it's accurate. So I would always suggest for people, go to a group in Facebook or to a website, and if somebody can answer your questions with authenticity, and you're going to use your instincts, whether it feels right to you or whether it doesn't. And then you're going to be able to use that information, and either you're going to believe it, use it, or not. I think the toughest thing for me, from my perspective, would be a lot of people will also look at photographs. And there's a lot of matrixing going on in photographs. You've got different depths and hues, variations, especially with vegetation. And they will circle and circle and circle what they say is a spirit. And, oh, I see a face and I see this and that. And I'm looking at it like, no, there's not. And when I mention this is what it is, I get a lot of flashback. Like they want so much to believe that it's a spirit that they're not coming back. And I know that this was discussed earlier. They're not really sitting back and looking at the situation to think, hey, maybe this is just leaves in the background. So that would be my biggest things, is that people are pretty gullible. But at the same time, society has changed so much in that it is more accepted, the paranormal, even mediumship, working with spirits. We're all here trying to validate that they're there and that they exist. And so as this becomes more accepting in society, so do people become more open to the idea that there's all of these parameters that they can work with. So now it just comes down to deciphering what is real and authentic and what might not actually be the real thing. So trying to educate people is my biggest thing. I'm always writing articles and trying to respond to as many posts as I can, letting them know this is what it is. And a lot of it too has to do with me being a realist. If someone thinks it's something and it's not supernatural, I'm going to mention that. I am not afraid to say it's not a spirit. If I'm having a problem with it, I'll read the energy in the photograph or the video or the situation. And more times than not, I'll be able to identify exactly what it is. And that's where being a medium really comes into play, because you can't just look at a photograph. Like you were mentioning earlier with orbs, you can't just say, oh yeah, that's a spirit. Not all the time. Most of the times it's not. And I'm always that one person that says, actually, it's dust or it's rain, or you know what I mean? So I'm out there trying to educate people, I'm trying to show them what you need to look for, what you need to really pay more attention to, and what is authentic versus what is not. So for me, that would probably be the biggest thing.
Right on. Now, before we go to Kenny, what, from a psychic perspective and viewpoint, do you believe that there's a lot of fakes, frauds, and people that are just probably crazy when they say that they have abilities? Do you think that is a problem? Do you think frauds and fakes cause problems?
Huge. There's a ton of charlatans, especially on Facebook. I'm just going to call them out. I struggle with that quite a bit, because when there are authentic mediums or psychics out there that are trying to prove that they're real and that they are trying to help and heal the community, it's difficult when you've got all of these hundreds of people stepping up saying that they're the real deal, and they're not. And they're scamming people, and they're telling people information that is inaccurate just to make a name for themselves, but they're not building their name based on authenticity. So yeah, there is a ton of charlatans out there. I absolutely agree. It's a big problem because it makes it harder for people like me to really show people, hey, there really are good people out there that know how to do this and that do it the right way. But I'm on that journey. And like I said, the more accepting that this is, the more people really are wanting to learn. So I always tell people, instead of trying to look at photographs and circle things that aren't there, dig down deep, raise your vibration, really learn to read the energy of things and make yourself authentic and real. You don't have to work so hard to prove that you are something that you're not. So definitely, that's a huge problem. Huge.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I think that's a fantastic answer to that question. Kenny, uh, pick maybe a few things on your list, and don't mention.
How did you know?
I I know you, Kenny. You mentioned photography. Try to hit on other points harder, but we know that
Oh my god. All right, I'll try to keep it short and sweet and just get right to the point. I agree with what Steve was saying, and I think his connection is not really good. But I think the point that he was trying to get across is there's a high ego and low humility. People think they're the shit, and that's just the blunt way to say it. They think they have this big ego. They think they're something special. They walk in, everybody walks in with that Zach Baggins attitude, with the shirt that's too tight and their muscles bulging out, and they're like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm an expert. Everybody pay attention to me. And they don't. And that's the sad truth. Most of them don't have a freaking clue about 95% of what they think they do. And that includes me. I don't know everything, and I'm constantly learning. That's why I wear this t-shirt. I never stop learning. What else? Stop thinking you know everything. You don't. You seriously do not know everything. Every single day, I am always working on 6, 7, 8 articles at a time. And I'm doing it in bits and pieces as I reach out to other people, because I'm reaching out to experts that in their fields of study and people that actually own things or have more knowledge about a certain topic than I do. And I'm reaching out to them. They get back to me. We have conversations. So I learn more about that stuff. And if I didn't ask, I would never know, which leads to my second point that attaches to this. Stop making shit up.
Yes.
Seriously. Don't make things up if you don't know. If you don't know something, simply say it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's an honest attitude. If somebody asks you a question and you have no answer, you don't know, if you say, I don't know, I can totally respect that. If you make something up, then you're nothing but a hoaxer. You're a deceptive person, and I don't like you anymore. And I will go out of my way to make sure people understand that you are making stuff up. What else? Realize that you can be wrong. This is a big problem. I mean, I've been wrong. I've written articles. I've written blog posts. I've done interviews where once in a while, because I really try to meticulously reference everything that I say, everything that I write. But once in a while, I do mess up. I make a mistake, and you have to own it. You have to tell people, like, yes, I was wrong about this. This is why, and explain why you were wrong. But just understanding that you can be wrong about something is not bad. It doesn't make you less of a person or less of a part of this community. It means you're being honest with people that are listening to you. So stop thinking that you're right all the freaking time. Ask yourself, what do I really know about this topic? And that goes along the same lines. People, for some reason, and you guys might see this too. I'm pretty sure you've seen this. Suddenly, when people say that they're a ghost hunter or a paranormal investigator, all of a sudden they become an expert in every single science topic imaginable. They have an opinion that they think is equal to everybody else's, and that's not the case. You can be wrong. Not everyone is an expert in everything. That's why we have specific fields of study. That's why we ask other people. We consult with other people. Share. Oh my God, share information. Don't keep it to yourself. There used to be, when I was a ghost hunter, there was this whole territorial thing going on where you wouldn't give up a location because you wouldn't let anybody else investigate it because that was your location. And everything you got was your own. And nobody would share information. I see less of that now, but I still see people hoarding information and not releasing it. Why?
It's crazy.
That's the whole point of science. Science community, they share everything.
Right.
They put it out.
My question is, not to interrupt, but if you're trying to validate the paranormal, you have to have other people come in and either replicate the result or set up, you have to have validation. Einstein didn't prove his theory of general relativity with one astronomer, reading the bending of starlight around the sun during an eclipse. It took several people, and it took constant, replication of that observation. So what you just said is mind-boggling to me as well. I don't get it.
Replication is big. Peer review is big. If you can't explain something, fine. You go out to other people, and a majority do. They go out to the rest of their team, but that's not enough. That's not enough. You do, because the rest of your team might not have the knowledge or experience necessary to give a good answer, a qualified answer. So you have to keep going out into that internet world and look for experts, not other. And this is going to sound mean, and I'm sure I'm going to get some comments, but don't go to other ghost hunters. Just don't, because this is a hobby to me. It's a hobby. It's a serious hobby. Some people call it a field. I call it a hobby. But if you're going to go to another ghost hunter that does not have the background that's necessary to give a good qualified answer, then you're wasting your time. Go to a qualified person. Find a professional photographer outside of the paranormal. This is called independent third party. Go outside of your hobby and find somebody that has the expertise, that can give you information, that can give you a honest, informative answer. What else do I have? I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I can go on and on. Stop pretending to do things you can't. and this goes along with what Audra was just saying, and you guys were talking about, with people that out there that are pretending, that are saying that they can do some things that they can't. And some, granted, I will say some honestly believe that they can do these things, and it's not deceptive. I don't find that deceptive at all. But there are others that have been caught. They know they're modern snake oil. They're frauds. And we can talk about that later. That's a very dangerous term, but they're faking it, and they know they're faking it. And those people are disgusting to me and need to be called out. They need to be exposed for who they are, because they're hurting people. And I don't tolerate that at all. And yeah, you want to see me getting pissed off? Get me on one of those people. But there you go.
That works. I hope you guys are taking notes. Let's go back to the comment section. And Missy, have you been saving a question, a good one for these folks?
I have. I only have one question, so that's okay. Why is photographic evidence the only thing needed for proof when we can measure frequencies as brain scans and brain scans as psychic proof? I think that was, why can't we?
Okay, why can't still photography be proof of the paranormal, and why can't brain scans be proof of psychic phenomena? Is that the question?
Psychic proof.
Psychic proof. Okay. Steve, you want to start by answering that question?
First of all, I know with me personally and we do not accept still photography. And again, right along everything that can, informs you about, it's very true. So it's just really not worth the potential many debates about it. That's why we only really use video, and even that very rare to catch something we would comfortably say is unexplained. In addition to read, was it different things like that? I think it's what it said. It's kind of a long question. I definitely think that's very, very important. It's any new way that potentially can help support, in some ways um, prove that it's definitely needed. Definitely needed for the paranormal view.
Alrighty.
That's pretty much my.
Okay. Real quick, it looks like we have resurrected Mike Baker on Facebook, Kenny, just to let you know if you didn't see that.
Yes. Hey, Mike.
If it's the same Mike Baker we spoke of before. Mike, if you're watching, message me later. I might have you on this show, buddy. But we're going to go to Audra. I'll ask you the question, Audra. They were wondering, I guess our understanding of the question is, why can't brain scans and photographs be proof of psychic phenomena or paranormal phenomena? Why is there more needed?
Photographs, obviously, because it could be anything. It could be moisture, bugs. It could be anything. Brain scans, that'll work. You know what I saw that was really cool? I don't know if this could be used as proof, but those cameras where it shows heat and cold signatures? There were two people sitting across from each other, and one person started reading the other. And you can literally see their auras expanding. That, to me, is proof. You can... say you've got a psychic there or a medium. If they're validating things that are going on that they have absolutely no knowledge of, that's considered proof for me. That's good enough for me because they're obviously tuning into the energy and they're coming up with evidence that can be proven. I think that there are definitely other ways that we can prove phenomena. I think that because over time we've gotten so used to photos and different things that we're expecting more, we're wanting more. We're able to rule certain things out, like, okay, maybe this isn't enough because X, Y, Z. There's so many different variable reasons. So, sometimes I think we just need more. We want more. We're thirsty for knowledge and even science in this too.
Right on. Kenny, I know you've answered this, but why don't we go into why still photography is in a different angle? What I always say is, why take one photograph or two or three photographs when you can take video where there's 24 frames up to 60 frames a second? Let's talk about that, for example. Why is it that still photography isn't evidence at all? Let's go into that deeper.
Well, it's wow. Basically because the modern digital age, you can manipulate photos right on your phone. And in camera, you can do it either or, and it's very easy. It takes a few seconds. I'm sure we're all familiar with ghost apps, right? You with 2 clicks, literally 2 clicks on your phone, you can add a ghost to any photograph in your gallery. That right there tells you, hey, this isn't going to work anymore. And if you do it on regular cameras, digital cameras or DSLRs, it's easy to get home. You process the image, and I've dealt with somebody that openly hoaxed photos and claimed that he got them on his DSLR, but they were always there, and he showed it to people on his camera. But it's very easy to take it home, process the image, add a ghost, put it back on the SD card, put it back in your camera, and say, "Oh, look, I didn't mess with anything at all." It's in camera. So those basic ideas are why you can't accept a single photograph as evidence. You need other stuff. It's not just, I guess the best way to put this is that ghosts or anything paranormal is an extraordinary claim. All right. And by nature, and we all know versions of this quote, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One photograph is not extraordinary evidence. You need a mountain of evidence to support that extraordinary claim. And that's really what it comes down to. And I went through the chat room just to make sure I understood this question. And I found it. It looks like it's from Amanda. It says, my question is, why is photography the only way to prove psychic or paranormal phenomenon when there are other things like frequencies or brain waves to measure? And I guess to answer that question specifically is that photography is not the only way or the way to prove psychic or paranormal phenomenon at all, because of the reasons we just discussed. And I mean, you can measure frequencies. Yeah, you can pick up frequencies with your radio, and brainwaves. We can scan them. If it has anything to do with psychic ability, that would take a long time to actually establish. It's not just. Oh, what was that?
I think that might have been Steve Hummel's phone.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
I mean, when you do MRIs and brain scans, and you're looking at what lights up, what sections light up in the brain, now you're talking, okay, what caused it? And we have to narrow down what caused it. And that gets into a lot of science, putting controls on it, looking at all the variables that go into that, and controlling for every variable that could possibly make that section light up. So it's more intense than just looking at a brain scan. And I hope that doesn't come across as being a jackass, Amanda. I'm just trying to answer the question, and all these thoughts are popping in my head at the same time. But did that answer your question, Justin?
Yes. I think I think that's what our understanding of it was. But thanks for going back and rereading that.
Okay.
I apologize, guys. I guess
okay.
I didn't read it right.
That's all right. We will continue. I think that we got it answered. All right, guys. Let's talk about each other's field that we're talking about. Steve, do you think psychics and skeptics have a place in the paranormal field? If so, why?
Absolutely. First, I'll start with the skeptic. My opinion, in order to be a very thorough and respectable investigator, I know that word gets thrown around a lot. You need to be skeptical, or else, again, you're going to fall for anything and everything you see, hear, or do. So, definitely, being skeptical, being rationally minded, trying to disprove in order to help potentially prove your evidence is very, very vital. Being psychic, yes, I definitely believe that serves a very, very important place in the paranormal field. Me personally, I could be an empath. I do try to use that whenever I'm helping people with whatever problems they're facing at their home, place of business. And of course, as you know, I end up getting items given to me to remove from their houses from certain cases I've been on. I do believe it's very, very important. But as everyone has pointed out on this show, everybody needs to be very, very careful on who they confide in for help, or for if they have questions, or they're trying to learn about the ins and outs of the paranormal field, or psychic abilities. It's very, very important to, again, find and ask the right people. So I believe both, yes, psychic and skeptics are very, very important to the paranormal field.
All right. So I say this kind of jokingly and tongue in cheek. So don't learn how to investigate the paranormal from TV, like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Asylum and shows like that. Is what you would say, right?
I'll put it this way: I trust very, very, very few people in life in general. If someone over the phone or over, say, this radio show or on a YouTube video says this is the way to do something, I'll take it with a little bit of confidence that they're being genuine, being nice, and trying to inform me. And I will personally, what I would do things is do the research myself and develop my own opinion on whatever the topic may be. I've personally met many people from the shows. I think genuinely they're very, for the most part, nice people. I do believe the producers have a lot more to do with the show than people claim that the individuals on the teams have to do with it. I will say that. Working at the penitentiary, I've met crew from Ghost Adventures, the Ghost Asylum and Ghost Lab and stuff like that. Most of them seem to be very decent people, but then again, when producers get involved, it's all about the money. So I'll say it that way.
Fair enough. Audra, I'll re-ask the question. Do you think now psychics, investigators, and skeptics alike, do you think that there's a place for each of those fields in the paranormal research field in general? Is there a place for them to discover if there's, life after death, if there's such a thing as ghosts, entities like demons, angels, stuff like that? Is there a place for all those fields?
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I wish that more investigative teams worked with mediums. I know a lot of Facebook groups separate it. They don't like working with mediums, and I'm sure it has to do with the high volume of charlatans out there. But what's really cool is that mediums are able to discern energy and the different levels of energy. So they're going to be able to pick up on information that an investigator is not. So while an investigator can, they've got their tools out there, they're trying to prove different ways that there is activity going on. A medium is going to be able to discern who is there, why they're there. Is it residual energy versus not? And that's why I think that psychics and mediums and investigators can definitely work hand in hand. They can balance each other out. And I do feel that mediums also need to have a certain level of skepticism just to keep it real. Not everything is going to be paranormal or spiritual activity. So having a realist idea behind all of this and having the two working together, what is going to bring out the real answers? And like I said, I wish more would team up. I think there'd be more evidence provided at the end of the investigation that I think is also going to help and heal. Now, there are some times where people go in and they investigate these homes that have activity, they get all their proof and then they leave. Now the activity has increased. What do? And oftentimes the investigators don't go back to sort of clean that up or give them answers. Not all of them. Some of them actually do know how to do that. But if there's a medium that was there during the investigation, they're going to know how to tame that energy down. They're going to know how to cleanse the home and sort of bring everything back to a reasonable state so that they're not leaving the family with additional issues because they were there. So there are so many advantages for both to be there, definitely.
I will add that it is very good idea to bring, let's just say, a psychic or medium along just to do experiments. You can help try to find answers on both the psychic phenomena and the phenomena that's reported, like ghost spirits, hauntings. What I try to do is I'll use outside, like say I called you up, Audra, and I'll be like, okay, I have a client investigation. I want you to go into the house blind, not knowing them, not knowing what they report. Go through, we document what you pick up on, and then maybe find another one too, like another person like yourself. Go in there blind, do a double blind experiment, and then we'll cross-reference what you pick up with what the other one picks up with what the client reports and what the investigator finds. And doing that, I think, is a really good idea, not only to figure out if the psychic phenomena is how accurate it is, how inaccurate it is, you're also investigating the claims. And they get to hear, like you said, from each individual's perspective and opinion.
Well, in doing that too, I want to add to that, in that psychics and mediums will also pick up different things. If you have two there and they're bouncing these readings off of each other, one will pick up one thing, another might pick up another. There, of course, is going to be commonalities in there as well. But I don't think it's going to disprove that one is picking up on the energy or not, but it's going to bring more light. Now you've got two people who are picking up on the energy and the spirits and activity that are there. So I mean, all it's going to do is just help the situation.
Right. Yeah. Of course, same goes with an investigator or a skeptic. One skeptic might not be able to find an explanation where the other one couldn't. So it goes right. It goes both ways. Kenny, is there a place for psychics? Is there a place for paranormal investigators and skeptics? Can we, Can we all work together? Is there a place for all of us?
I saw the the deep breath you took, like, Kenny. Okay, let's ask him. Okay, so yeah, skeptics. Obviously, I am one. I call myself one, and I introduce myself as one. So yeah, skepticism is about doubt. We really have to make that clear. It's about doubt, and not just I don't believe anything. It's just having doubt about a claim and wanting to get to the core truth of something. So that's pretty much the goal that I go by, that philosophy that I go by. I have doubts about extraordinary claims, and I want to know more. I want to know good, solid evidence before I would accept a claim. When it comes to psychics, okay, Audra, don't get mad at me. No, I don't think that they have a place. I think that's a separate issue, because as far as I've seen, as far as the scientific literature that I've gone through, psychics have not proven to be able to do what they claim to do. Most of the evidence comes from anecdotes and testimonials, which are not evidence. I am familiar, and I'm not saying all psychics use these techniques, but I'm familiar with cold reading. I'm familiar with hot reading. Life experiences allow us to predict, not metaphysically, but predict with some accuracy what other people are going through. We can read emotions in people's faces. That's a basic human nature. That's what we do. So a lot of these things can be misinterpreted as abilities beyond something normal. I think that anyone making the claim that they have some kind of psychic ability, whatever it is, really needs to demonstrate that they can under scientific conditions. When you're in a regular environment where a reading has taken place, there are no controls in place to guard against. And I honestly apologize for using this word, but guard against cheating. And I'm not trying to use that in a bad way. I'm just saying there are unconscious cheating. There is consciously cheating. There are frauds out there that purposely use cold reading and hot reading to get information about people. But there are other people that kind of pick up on information and from subtle cues, from what people are wearing, how they present themselves, how they speak, accents, the way they cut their hair or groom themselves. I mean, there's cues from this that you can pick up. There's pre-show work. I have the benefit of knowing several mentalists that I can work with, that I can consult with, that I have learned from, that I have gone around during presentations and learned a lot of information from them. So there's a lot there that can. I'm looking at my notes too because I wrote a lot down. What else? There's information about locations that you can learn days or weeks or months prior to actually visiting it that you can forget until you get there. And these little snippets of information come up like little memories that can influence the readings or how people describe what's going on or what they think is going on. Cues from the environment, and the what I think is a negative is that often I see investigators change their tactics and how they go about their investigation based on what a psychic tells them. And it could go totally off the direction of the claims that are originally made. And I want to clarify that when I investigate something, when I investigate a allegedly haunted place or some kind of mystery like that, I'm looking at the actual claims that are coming out of that. Like if somebody says that we hear footsteps at 3 a.m., that's what I'm investigating. So if somebody else comes in and says, oh, I feel a presence here or I feel a presence there, you might take away from the original claim and never actually investigate that original claim to figure out if there's any truth to it. What else do I have? I don't want to take up too much time. I don't like the word energy being used, and I've always had a pet peeve about that because I come from a science approach. Energy is defined as the ability to do work. So when I hear about like negative energy and positive energy, good or evil and stuff like that, to me, that doesn't make sense because that's not what energy is. It's a purely metaphysical term. and it doesn't work within the science approach. What else? Experiments. I think, Justin, you mentioned doing experiments with psychics, and I agree. I agree with that to a point. I think, yes, if somebody claims to be psychic and have certain abilities, yes, I totally agree that we should test them, but separate from a paranormal investigation or a ghost hunt, because you have too many variables. You're introducing other variables into that, and the person being tested can hear what other investigators are doing or know the location or have stories. You need to test them separately. And if anybody wants to be tested to get this more credibility to their name, I have a friend in California, James Underdown, that runs the Independent Investigations Group. They run $100,000 challenge to anyone, and they're actually associated now with the Center for Inquiry, which is who I write a monthly column for. They have a $100,000 challenge for anyone that claims to have paranormal powers that can be demonstrated under controlled conditions. It's pretty much like the James Randi $1 million challenge, but that doesn't exist anymore, or at least it's on hold for now. So I always encourage people, like, hey, if you got this ability, like I can set up a test based on what they describe, but if you want to make some money, or even make some money and donate it to charity, by all means, please contact my friend out in California and win the $100,000. If you don't want the money yourself, donate it to a charity, cancer research, something like that. That would be beautiful. So that's it. I guess to sum it up, skeptics, yes. Psychics, no.
Okay. Audra, I'm going to allow you to come back with this. Do you agree with what Kenny is saying? Do you understand? Do you disagree? How would you counter that?
I can totally appreciate skeptics. I have no problem with them. But I think that there's also a lack of education with skeptics as well. Everything contains energy. Everything that you hold, you see, everything around you, including air, holds energy. Residual energy, like investigators try and prove residual energy versus real energy or what's not. It's interesting how we're all working with the same energy, and we are able to tune ourselves into that energy and vocalize it, whereas investigators use equipment. We're all doing the same thing. I mean, you might hear something on an equipment and I can easily say, well, that was just a sound. How can you prove that that was a voice from a spirit? We can be just as skeptic with investigators and their equipment as well. It's all about trust. And there are some people who have the ability, especially empaths, when their frequency is higher, their energy, their vibration is higher, they're at a higher frequency, and they're able to discern the different energies, whether they're high, whether they're low, what realm they're on. There are so many different things that we can tune ourselves into hearing, seeing, feeling, and knowing, because we work hard to get to that place. Not everybody does. Skeptics tend to have a lower vibration because they completely close off the idea that this can even happen. But let me tell you, when I read people, I don't sit in front of them and read body language. I do a lot of things over the phone. And if I'm reading spirit, I'm not going to have a photograph of them. I'm not visually seeing the people I'm reading on the phone. So I'm not going by visual cues that can tell me what their personality is like. I am tuning in to the energy of that person or the energy of that spirit. And yes, we do use that term a lot because that's what we're doing. You can read about metaphysics. You can read about quantum physics. Everything deals with energy. I use that word all the time. I love that word because it describes exactly what we're working with. We're obviously not working with physical things, material things that we can hold. So what else is there to work with? It's going to be energy. It's going to be working with the different frequencies that are out there so that we can determine who we're seeing, feeling, hearing, and knowing. So, like I said, though, I disagree with what he's saying, but I appreciate where he's coming from because the skeptics keep us real. They keep us thinking. It balances things out. And I have no problem working with skeptics. I just wish that they were a little bit more open-minded, that they also do not have all the answers, that they also don't know what we know. They don't understand it. So don't discount it if you don't understand it. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Now, before I'm going to ask I want to ask you real quick, Kenny, is it possible that science has not figured out a fundamental force or a force that explains psychic phenomena, and we just don't understand that part of the physics of it? Is that a possibility?
It's always a possibility. I mean, it's a possibility. Science. I would never say science knows everything, and that would be stupid on my part. Honestly, I mean, science is always, it's ever growing. It's always learning. I mean, we're always expanding our knowledge. And is there something out there? Maybe. I mean, we're always discovering new things. That's why we have like the Large Hadron Collider. I mean, we're always doing tests. We're always figuring out new things. But when it comes to basic concepts that are well established, I think that's where we will disagree. Because we go on with this for a long time, and there's really no way to say it without. I don't like sounding like an ass, and I think that's
you answered my question. I know we can go on for a while debating it, but we just don't have time to just debate that topic alone. Right. But you and Audra can get together and talk and hammer it out and help each other.
Is it possible? Maybe. Probably. Maybe. Is it probable? No.
Well, I will. Right. You may be right. I'm going to read a quote that a lot of New Age metaphysicists go by, either whether they've heard a quote or not. They, through popular culture and reading. Einstein was quoted saying, "Concerning matter, we have all been wrong. What we have called matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered to be perceptible by the senses. There is no matter." So I think people's understanding of what scientists and physicists say about matter, it being all energy, I think that's where they get a lot of this from. But they fail to understand it beyond that. They kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But I have to say that, first of all, we have to actually confirm that that's an actual Einstein quote, because unfortunately, the majority of metaphysical sites that I come across misquote Einstein, attribute quotes to Einstein that aren't actually his quotes. So I can't even really debate this until I would actually verify that that's really a quote that came from him and find a source for it.
Okay, I have looked to verify it, and so far I have not found anything that has disproved it, but I do not have a source. I know you like sources, so what I will do is try to find actual published sources for you to make sure that's a quote.
I'm trying to go through now and find it. I was hoping that it would come up in the first first few that would pop up, but I don't see this at all.
We're going to move on to some questions in the comments. Let's go to YouTube. Any good questions for these folks? I know you may have more than one, I imagine.
Yeah, I have about 4.
Okay.
Floating around. We'll do Audrey. On a psychic medium point of view, what are the top 5 things that you look for when you are conducting your investigations?
I don't really have a list. If I do one, I'm like all geared up and excited, and I go in there. I have equipment too. I love using that stuff. And I'm just going to see what my equipment picks up. Am I picking anything up? And I have gone on investigations here in Chicago, and I was able to pick up on the energy. And I was in a group, and there was like someone walking us around. And I'm telling the moderator what I'm picking up, and he validated everything that I said, saying that everything I was coming up with is right. So that's what I look for. I mean, there aren't 5 things other than I want to be able to tune into the energy. I want to be able to have it validated. If I'm wrong, hey, no big deal. If I'm right, that's great. I'm good with both, but I'm always trying to feel, hear, and see the energy. I do like taking photographs and videos when I'm on investigations and using my equipment as well. So just, I'm open to whatever happens. Whatever happens, that's great. I mean,
Sure.
I don't have any pre-existing ideas of what to expect.
Okay. The next one is when debunking evidence and claims, how far is too far before you accept it as actually true evidence?
We'll have Steve answer this real quick.
Okay, can you say that again? Kind of broke up.
Sure. When debunking evidence and claims, how far is it too far before you accept it that it is true evidence?
Would it be how far until it's claimed as not evidence? Maybe that sounds make more sense to me. But
how far do you debunk any kind of evidence and claims of it not being paranormal for you to say it's actually paranormal?
Okay. Well, we I mean, there's a whole ringer of things that we go through when we're physically on site, and also while the actual episode is in edit bay. So basically, while we're there on site physically, we check, of course, if there are drafts, windows open, broken windows, what floor are we on? Are there any vehicles driving by? Are there animals, other people, which we only really investigate with either us or maybe two more people at a time. We keep it very, very small. We've taken pretty much every single possible variable we can think of while we're physically on site. And of course, that does not go into the actual episode. So while one's watching an episode on our channel, you're not going to see all 12 to 13 hours while we're on site shooting B-roll and shooting the actual investigations. Then once the video, all the raw content gets to edit bay, it probably takes Ryan and Dave cumulatively 80 to 120 man hours to actually go through all cameras, all recorders, and decipher is what we're looking at. One particular part of the video is it potentially unexplained at that time, and then plus we will resort back to our notes from when we're actually physically on site. So we put what we get as best we can through the ringer before we consider it even unexplained. So I'll just answer with on site, we try to disprove it there, and within 80 to 120 man hours while the video raw content is in edit bay, it also gets reevaluated then.
Audra, would you care to chime in on this?
When it comes to debunking, I actually go through great lengths as well, because like I said, I'm a realist. I don't think everything is a sign. I don't think everything is spiritual in nature or metaphysical. So I will do whatever I need to try and figure out, is this authentic stuff coming in or can it be explained? So, I mean, it really just depends on the situation. What is going on, and trying to figure out different variances that you can disprove it. And if I can't, then obviously it's going to be the real thing. But see, I can also tune into what's going on too, and I'm able to discern also if something is as how it appears to be. So, I mean, that kind of helps. It's my backup.
Right on. Kenny, have you found the quote yet to be not true? I'm just curious about that.
I found one site that has it, and but I don't know. I mean, these are just quotes. It's not like an actual authentic.
Right. To validate it, you actually have to find publication.
And then we have to go in. I mean, this is a whole show by itself, because now you have to delve into, all right, what's this? What's the interpretation of this?
My point was, that is a quote that's out there, whether it's really Einstein's quote or not. That's what I was kind of saying. That's what people would perceive in different ways outside the science field.
Right. Yeah. And you can perceive it. And unfortunately, that's it. When you get into interpretations like that, I can use any quote I want and I can interpret it any way I want. So it's a quote doesn't prove anything. It's a quote. Great. Well, give me a reference and then let's do the work to support what that quote is supposed to mean. Let's show our work. We all grew up with that, right?
So I'm guessing that EM equals MC squared is what that is, talking about.
Okay. Well, yeah, I lost a quote concerning matter. There you go. We all matter, energy. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a physicist. I've never studied quantum physics or physics at all, so I don't have the background necessary to answer this question.
Fair enough. So the question from YouTube was, what links do you go through to debunk before you know that it's something you cannot explain?
All right. So I want to clarify first that even though that's usually what I do, that's not my intention. I don't set out to debunk anything. I set out to figure out what's going on, what's causing an experience or an event. So in that aspect, from that perspective, I go to whatever length I have to. I search every angle, and that's part of what I love about what I do, researching and following every lead to understand, okay, what caused this? And I have to find a cause. That's the basic idea. You have to find a cause in order to know what the cause was. If you don't find a cause, you don't know. So therefore, you cannot label something paranormal if you don't know what caused it, because you're basically making it up. To just be blunt, you're making up an answer. If you say it's a ghost and you don't have any supporting data, then you're making it up. If you say, oh, it's probably just a train going by and you don't have any supporting data for that, you're making it up. So both sides of the coin, you have to have supporting data. So I will always go as far as I can, visit the scene, talk to the locals, talk to the people that witnessed the event or had the experience, do whatever I have to. And if I exhaust all of my leads and I still do not have an answer, then my answer is I don't know. And I leave it that way until I get more information.
Right. Just so we're all on the same page on what the definition of paranormal is, pretty much any phenomena that occurs that is outside the definition or understanding of science. And when you don't know, like if you witness something levitate across the, a chair move on its own, if you can't find a rational or scientific explanation for that, do you think that would fit in the definition of paranormal?
That's hard, because that definition of paranormal is, I don't think that's accurate. Because it's more like you might define something, and I'm just using you as an example, but you might define something as paranormal because you saw something fly across the room. But from my perspective, I might be in a different room and see somebody threw it, toss it across the room. Therefore, it's not paranormal. But to you, it's perceived as paranormal. It's more of a perception of something that's outside of science. It's not necessarily something that's really outside of science, because we haven't proved the paranormal.
Right. I think that's a distinction that we need to talk about a little bit here, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the big distinction. I mean, what is labeled paranormal is based on perception, not actually evidence. Because, I mean, what did we think was paranormal before? People got sick. And nobody knew why until we discovered germ theory, until that developed through science. We had no idea that germs existed. And then all of a sudden, boom, we know what's causing this. So there's so many things out there that we don't know, but we're studying. We can label it paranormal, and depending on how do I say this? I guess culture. Because if you go to more like a tribal culture, we'll view a lot more things as supernatural, paranormal than us. Like people that are well versed in technology and have more understanding of what goes on in the world and the universe. Wow, this is a big question.
Well, I mean, it's an archetype, right? Like ghost is an archetype. You know, the paranormal in itself is like an archetype. It's woven into our culture from many thousands of years. We don't know what happened there, so we can perceive it as paranormal, or we can just perceive it as, I don't know what the fuck that was. I mean, it's subjective. It's the definition of paranormal is really subjective.
It's very subjective. It's very subjective. I mean, if you can relate it to the thousands and thousands of gods that have and goddesses that have existed in cultures all around the world, you know, and some beginning of time, recorded time, there's certain amount of gods, and then they fell out of favor and new ones took over, and the afterlife, different versions of the afterlife, because there's many different versions of the afterlife have developed depending on the culture, and it's just been ingrained in our culture, and we see we most of us believe in a life after death. Some of us hope there's something, you know, I just don't shut my eyes and that's it. And then others believe that we still hang around, and then you can go in all different directions with that. So where do you go? It's all interpretation. It's all perception. It's belief. I mean, there's so many factors involved in this,
Right.
You just have to look at each one individually and dissect it.
Makes for great shows, right?
Oh my God, that's like 2 or 3 seasons worth of shows right there.
That's right. Steve, why don't you chime in on this? When you can't debunk something or can't find an explanation for it, do you call it paranormal? Is that what you do?
I personally do not know. I said earlier, I believe in the show, we as a group will call it unexplained. The best of our efforts of trying to debunk it, and which is why one of the main reasons we do our show, we do our channel. That's the reason why there's a message board on each episode, because we want to know what people think, see, feel, whichever, you know, however they want to approach our episodes. That's what they're there for. And of course, we get your typical trolls and stuff like that, people just being, you know, idiots, you know, just chiming in, saying stuff completely irrelevant. But, you know, no. I think the most we've actually, I can recall the word paranormal was used, that was very, very early in our 8.5, 9 years of doing our YouTube channel. The word, again, that gets mostly used is unexplained, which correlates Kenny pretty much has said. And I think it's one thing that, you know, I think our approach as a group, PQ, Paranormal Quest, is that we try to be the best critics we can or skeptics or whatever, to help potentially support what we feel might be paranormal, because the word paranormal gets thrown around so much anymore, and it's almost, the word is almost redundant anymore, and
maybe even cliche.
Oh yeah, it's terrible, and but no, again, to answer your question, we prefer unexplained, because we each four come from different belief structures, so it's a good, we try to make it a neutral way. We all four, and this is a small scale, try to help answer our own questions, but also support each other in the process.
Awesome. Love PQ, by the way. Audra,
thank you.
You want to chime in on this?
Okay. You kind of, it's so hard for me to hear him because he's in and out, so I don't know how to respond because I couldn't pick up most of what he was saying.
Pretty much, I'll re-ask. Is that what you do? Like when you go through your investigation, or you're trying to determine or validate if something's spirit, something's explainable? I mean, do you ever get to the point where you say, yes, it is spiritual, it is paranormal? Do you determine and validate things to others or to yourself that way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, for me, it's probably a little bit easier because I could feel the energy that's going on in the room. If there's a spirit in the room, I feel it. Like it's like there's this higher vibration there. Let's say, for example, something flies off the wall. What are you going to do? You're going to walk over to the wall. You're going to see if the nail is falling out. Is it loose? Could that explain it? I mean, if we're all standing in the room and we're watching what's going on, is it paranormal? How do you explain that? Check the windows. Is there a fan on? I mean, look for any kind of movement that would explain it. I think that you do need to go through certain extents to see if something is paranormal or not. But again, like for me, if a spirit is in there moving something or doing something or even just present, I'm going to feel it and I'm going to know it. So I don't know. For me, it's a little bit different than the perspective from an investigator.
Right. To me personally, I think it's semantics. You can call it unexplained. You can call it paranormal. You can call it chicken gravy. It doesn't matter. You know, a lot of people likes to debate what they would like to call something unexplained or paranormal. I think the definition of the paranormal does say is synonymous to unexplained.
Right.
So I think it boils down to semantics, and we'll leave it there. We'll move on. We're going to go to the comments. Anything good on Facebook that you got, Missy? We're reaching the end of the show. Hit them with the best thing Facebook's got.
Someone asked, Kenny, have you ever seen or heard anything that almost made you believe?
Drum roll.
Well, I guess, yeah, earlier when I was a ghost hunter, I mean, I believed everything. I believed orbs were ghosts and stuff like that. So I was getting stuff all the time thinking it was. But I guess I'll address that from my perspective now. No, because I've really adopted the attitude that if I can't find a source, if I can't find an explanation, then I leave it up to I don't know until I can get more information. I hope that doesn't sound like conceited or anything. It's not like, if I can't figure it out, then nobody can. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if there's been experiences where, people have jumped or you heard a noise or a loud bang or, I caught that cobweb in my hair, which freaks me out because you're like, oh shit, because it's dark and stuff. But I usually figure out what's going on. So it's no big deal. My first thought is never, it's a ghost. It's okay. My first thought is what's going on? What caused that? And I start looking for a cause. If I can't find it, I can't find it. I'll come back to it. And sometimes I've come back years later to find a cause. But no, I really don't think there's anything that has made me stop and think, well, maybe, except for when I, go into philosophical thinking and, sit here when I'm bored late at night, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I wonder if there is an afterlife. What would it be like? And then I start thinking about it. But, other than that, no.
All right. Anything else really good on Facebook before we check YouTube and wrap this thing up?
No.
All right, Jessica, anything really good, even better that all three can address?
Have you ever turned down an investigation and why? That's from Val.
And Steve, go.
The only times we've, as a group, have turned down investigations normally involves, can we take off work? Do we have the financial means of going to the location? Those are pretty much the only two reasons that we have, a few in the past, have had to turn down an investigation.
Okay, Audra, same question.
I have never turned one down. I love going on investigations. In fact, I've actually tried to team up with some teams and they're like, oh, you're a medium? No. And so I don't end up going. But I mean, if anyone wants to go on one with me, give me a buzz. I love going on them. I would never turn it down unless it was a time constraint.
Kenny wants to go with you.
Yeah, sure, I'll go.
I do that.
I have no problem with that. I'd love to.
All right, Kenny, have you ever turned an investigation down?
Yes. And it's usually after the first communication online and we talk, and I really look for testable claims. So, I mean, like going back to the example of like footsteps coming down the stairs at 3 a.m. That's a testable claim to me because we can be there at 3 a.m. We can see if it really is footsteps. But if somebody is, I'm sure you guys, everybody else has experienced this, but sometimes you get that, like the feeling from the wordage and how they're approaching it. And maybe they're too aggressive, that nothing is really going on. They just want you to come out. And for that to me is like, I'm not going there because I'm getting that psycho feeling from you, and I'm not going out. And I've been in those situations where it's gotten kind of dangerous. But that's usually when I turn it down, when there's nothing there for me to test. When I can't help you. You know, like there's nothing for me to do except if I'm going to sit here for 12 hours or 14 hours and wait for something to happen. There's nothing there for me to test. When you have something that's solid, that happens all the time, or predictable, or something that, again, we can test, then yeah, I'll show up.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very good advice for people. Thanks for all the comments and questions. I'm sorry that we couldn't probably get to all of them. I hope you understand why we couldn't do that. Let's wrap up the show with some plugs from everybody, because I want to promote each and every one that's on the show's work and let the viewers know how they can get a hold of them outside the links I provided in the video description. So, Steve, let everybody know all the plugs and promotions you want them to know right now.
Okay. Well, the museum I have is Archive of the Afterlife, the National Museum of the Paranormal. It's in Moundsville, West Virginia. You can use Facebook, Google, TripAdvisor to find it. The group I'm with is Paranormal Quest. It's on YouTube, very easy to find. If you want to visit, subscribe, follow, and that's pretty much it. I'm trying to keep it low key this coming year for my personal events that I normally do. So.
All right, awesome, Steve. Thanks for coming on, man. You're always very delightful to talk to, and very grounded when it comes to the paranormal, and I appreciate that.
Anything to help you guys out. It's a pleasure meeting Audra and Kenny. I do want to say this. Definitely, people like each of you are needed in the paranormal field, and I'm really glad that our personal note, this didn't turn into a pissing match. So, it was very, very relieving, very a productive conversation with each of you, and hopefully the people who were tuning in definitely pick something up from this show. Justin, keep up the amazing work, man.
Thanks, man. I will. Audra, what would you like our awesome, super cool, highly intelligent viewers to know about you?
First of all, thank you for letting me be on the panel tonight. This was a lot of fun. I have a website. If you guys want to go to, it's audraloibl.com. You have to look at my name. It's spelled a little different. But I also run a group, and it's called Lifting the Psychic Veil. And it's because we're trying to bridge the gap between the physical and the spiritual realms. So it's actually called Free Psychic Readings, Lifting the Psychic Veil. But we also do mediumship development in there as well. And we also do some paranormal stuff as they come in. We work on missing persons cases. We read people and spirits. So if anyone wants validation, is what we do authentic, come into our group. You'll see the real deal. You'll see people providing information that they were not privy to, which is very validating for psychics and mediums. We do that all in our group, Lifting the Psychic Veil.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. I think you did great, Audra. You were wonderful, and I hope to have you on the show again, and I hope to talk to you very, very soon about the paranormal and learning from each other. You've been great.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys can hang out in the video call for the remainder while we wrap this up. Kenny, plug it.
Plug it. You can find most of my stuff on Facebook at I am Kenny Biddle. I am not conceited and think I'm so great. That's just, I use that name just so people know who they're talking to when they message the blog, because I hate like messaging or posting comments to a blog and you have no idea who you're talking to. You can also find my work on the Center for Inquiry / Skeptical Inquirer magazine. If you just do a search, a Google search, you get to their site. I do a monthly column, and I also do special articles for them, and dealing with every kind of paranormal mystery there is. And we look for it. We get really in depth. I also speak at various conferences and groups. I'm pretty much done for the year because, the last month I pretty much don't do anything, so I can spend time with family and focus on family. But I'm always available to tag along with paranormal groups and psychics. Audra, we'll hang out. But I'm always willing and to come out. I love coming out and seeing what people do, how they do it, and just interacting and talking. Because I think the conversation is the best thing and the best way to learn what everybody's doing and understand what everybody is doing. And so there you go. That's pretty much it.
Especially this conversation, right?
Yes, especially with you, Justin.
All right. Thanks, Kenny. You're always a pleasure. I always link your articles when it comes to understanding how things work, and your research is very, very well done, and I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Without people like you, it would be hard. It would be hard. All right, you guys can hang out in the call while I wrap this up. Thanks very much for everyone tuning in tonight. It was awesome. The chat room was awesome. The questions were awesome. The guests were awesome. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. You were great. I will not forget this episode. You made it, very memorable for me. So we're going to do this again on Live Paranormal. Okay, guys? I'll let you know when. I think it's December 17th. I don't know everybody that's going to be on the panel, but December 17th on Monday from 8 to 10, same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to do this again with 3 other people in the same field. We have some things to look at here, okay? I want you to take a look at these links. Of course, go to www.liveparanormal.com. Check out their website. They have a lot of stuff going up. I think Rob and Nicole are starting a whole new website out there. They're putting a whole bunch of cool stuff on there, so check that out. You can check out my paranormal research at www.interfacedeath.net. You can follow Live Paranormal on Facebook at The Live Paranormal. You can support shows like this and the paranormal research that we do on Patreon. Okay, if you like this content, you want to see it, stay, progress, get better, you can support the content not only on the live shows but the paranormal research we do on Patreon. You get rewards for the financial support you provide for the show. So please check that out. The link is in the description. You can follow Interface Death on Twitter and Instagram. The links are there as well. And last but not least, we will shout out our patrons: Clay Borman, R.J. Murphy, Danette Goldtrip, Scotty Fox, Jessica Bias, Bill Davis, Joe Vitale, and Sherry Brett. Without these folks on the screen, this content would not be possible. We appreciate you guys very much. If you would like to be shouted out just like this, check us out on Patreon/support Interface Death. I'm going to leave it there, folks. You guys have a good night. If you are not familiar with my live shows, you can stick around for some video promotions. As always, guys, I will see you next time. I bid you farewell.
You in this room over here? What the fuck, dude? Whoa. That's weird.
You didn't do anything, right?
No, I just turned. Justin too close.
No,
He opened that door and it went off.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just run out of there? What was that?
I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe in this room.
Generally, just as best, do you just take long pauses, wait to see if you hear things, observe everything that's going on?
It depends on the location and our experience with the location. So in this case, at Waverly Hills, since we've been here before, we've heard a lot of stories, done a lot of research, and investigated. We typically like to listen a lot because we hear the coughing, we heard it last time, so we didn't hear it again. Of prolonged isolation, paranoia, depression, helplessness, brain stimuli decreases. Now, what happens when you put a man isolated in 3 paranormal infested buildings for 3 nights in each location, all by himself? No one to help me. No one to protect me. Just me versus you. Does paranormal activity increase?
So what do you think of this piece of evidence? I think by far it's the best piece of evidence we have seen here. That's flat out amazing. And that's something we've never captured.
Oh, wow.
What? Nobody has ever got it on video.
That's creepy.
In 11 years.
So no one's ever caught this on video?
Never. Ever.
Here is my story, and here is what I went through for my research into the paranormal.